First wrote Killer Joe in 1990. I was 25, 26 years old. It was the first play I had ever written. I was a Chicago stage actor, still am, and out of work and needed to fill my time. I'd always written, but it had never occurred to me to write for the stage. And I read a newspaper article about a true crime story about a Florida family, a murderous Florida family. It seemed like the stuff of pulp fiction, of sort of dime store novels, and I thought it might be interesting to try to put that kind of noir story on stage. And so I wrote it in '90 and then spent about 3 years trying to get the piece produced here in Chicago. People started talking about it as a movie almost immediately from the first time they saw it. I never understood that really. I thought, geez, it doesn't look very much like a movie to me in that it's confined to a single set. It's a very small cast.
When I saw his screenplay of Killer Joe, I thought that it really would make an excellent film. Now, the fact that it is set in a confined space, most of it, not all of it, but works for me because some of the themes that I've dealt with in my career before Killer Joe involve claustrophobia and paranoia.
It falls within the parameters that the theater sets in so many ways. So I didn't necessarily see it as very filmic.
Letz's screenplay is a view of the American family that is kind of twisted. But this is an original story with original characters.
And yet, given the strength of the story and the kind of tabloid nature of some of it, and that it definitely holds people's attention, to say the least, I think people felt that in and of itself, not to mention sex and violence, has always been a staple of the cinema. So I think for those reasons, people thought it would make a good film.
I would love to say that I'm responsible for this film. I am in the sense that I went to some very good producers and gave them the script, and they got interested in it and decided to do it. That's the extent of my responsibility. The rest of it, the film belongs to the screenwriter and the actors.
We talked a lot about casting. We talked about every element of casting. I understand as a writer that casting serves different needs. It not only serves the needs of the piece, but it also serves a need to sell tickets. I mean, there's all sorts of things that go into, not to mention balance of casting. One person that you cast then affects the other people that you cast around them. You're not casting each individual in a vacuum. You're completing a puzzle.
In some cases, I've been very fortunate with the cast. I've had a lot of misdirection with roles in The French Connection and The Exorcist and other films, and somehow or other, the movie god has brought me the right actors at the right time more often than not. And in this case, that's what happened with the cast of this film.
Killer Joe's not an easy role to take on for any actor. It requires a lot of economy and a lot of magma under the surface. That's not always fun to do.
One of the reasons that I went to Matthew is because he's so good looking. That's one of the reasons. And the fact is that Killer Joe involves a relationship between an older man and a 21-year-old girl. But there might have been a very strong resistance to that from an audience if the actor wasn't someone who had already established their relationship with a lot of the audience as a good guy and a decent guy, which Matthew is.
After the first read, which I did not get the script, it disgusted me and I didn't get any of the humor, and I didn't even allow myself to kind of fall in love with this character of Joe as an actor.
How are you going to kill my mama?
Oh, that's not appropriate dinner conversation, Donnie.
It took me a couple days to shake that off and then talk to some other peers of mine who I trust their reads on things, who said, no, it's hilarious. And I was like, and they pointed out kind of how and why.
I didn't know anything about this, I swear.
Were you aware of this, Ansel?
I'm never aware.
Matthew was not the first person that I thought of when we were putting this together. Now, having worked on this play for 20 plus years, the original Killer Joe was a man who was perhaps 32 years old. And then by the time the play got to the off-Broadway production, Scott Glenn was playing the role, who at the time we did the play, Scott was 60 years old. So I had seen the role played in that range. And I knew that whereas normally you're very focused on the age of the actor you're casting, that for the role of Killer Joe, what was more important was a timeless quality, a kind of iconic American quality, almost a Western quality.
And then I went back and reread it, and I allowed myself to let the humor come out of it. I allowed myself, and all of a sudden Tracy's meter, the meter of his writing is very different.
This is serious business you're fucking with here, boy.
I'm aware of that.
No, I don't think you are.
The meter came out, and I found the rhythm, and that's when I started to find my click with understanding the character.
He's also an accomplished actor. He gave himself 100% to this role. And I knew he was a dedicated actor and had tremendous reserves of talent and ability that he had not fully exploited in the films that made him popular.
There were so many ways as an actor, so many ways to approach the character of Joe. And I sat around and worked on it for a few weeks and tried not to make too many decisions for the character, but instinctually fell into some spots that really turned me on early.
So that's not a mark against Matthew that I didn't think of him instantly when we were casting the movie, but then when Billy proposed him, I thought about it, and I thought, well, he's great, he's perfect in a lot of ways.
He understood it immediately, and he prepared it. He did what an actor is supposed to do. It's the same thing that a great musician does. They know the score before they go in to play the music. They're reading it while they're playing. They're being guided by the conductor so they all stay in the same tempo, but they know the score. That's what happened with this cast.
Fuck!
Then in addition to that, you're casting a family. You're trying to find those elements of a family.
Chris, he's played by Emile Hirsch, who happens to be one of the best young actors of this or any generation. He reminds me a lot of Montgomery Clift, even James Dean. And he's likable. He's a wonderful, likable, accomplished actor.
All I knew was that it was a script I received that said Killer Joe on it. And as I started to read it, I kind of went back and forth. Is this a comedy? Is it a drama? Is this the writing of a madman? And it was an interesting struggle for me, because at the end of it, I said, I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be hilarious.
Hey, look, will you please put some clothes on?
Oh, my God, I never heard
It's
so
a bit
much
distracting. Your bush staring me in the face.
Tracy Letts, the playwright, worked on the script and honed it for years before it ever saw its first production on stage. And, you know, now, 20 years later, that the movie's being made, I just think that Billy is certain that what's there is as sharp as it should be.
Thomas Hayden Church, he's the real deal in this film. I mean, I said very little to him. He just knows this character very well. He still lives in Texas.
In rural Texas, I would say I have absolutely encountered a good number of Charlas and Ansels and Chris's and Dotties. And unfortunately, you know, I've had my own path crossed with law enforcement back in the day when I was a kid, and probably encountered a few more Killer Joe Coopers than I'd like to remember.
He was nominated for an Academy Award for Sideways, you know, and it's not any damn fool that gets nominated for an Academy Award. You're nominated by your peers, which is other actors. He is a tremendous actor, but he understood this role better than I did.
You don't want to start opening things up too much whenever it comes to you in such a sharpened place. And when I read it, I could see straight out there wasn't really any room to change too much.
Sometimes you have to know when not to talk to an actor. That's one of the most important decisions a director makes, when to just keep silent and let the actor play. Now, I've worked on a number of operas as a director, and it's very clear that the primary purpose of a conductor and a director in opera is to bring to the audience an understanding of what the composer created. That's what's important in filmmaking as well. First, tell the story. Second, provide the atmosphere for a cast that often has come to me out of the blue, in effect, by the movie god. Juno Temple, for example. I was considering other actresses for her role. Somehow or other, she got the script. I didn't send it to her. I don't know how she got the script. She got it, and she put herself on tape with her 10-year-old brother reading Killer Joe's lines to her.
I became aware of it truly because I got sent the script, and I was blown away by it. I was laughing and uncomfortable and a flurry of strange emotions.
I looked at it, and that was exactly who I was looking for. Then when I met her, I was astonished to learn that she's British and has a British accent. And what she was doing is a totally convincing Texas accent.
I spent a lot of time talking with Billy about this insane rage that she has bottled up inside of her. And it's years of it, it's her whole life. And she's been bottling it up, and at some point she is going to explode. And she does. I don't know if she'll ever lose. She's just innately one of those young women that is so childlike and has this innocent way of looking at the world, but she isn't an idiot. She knows more than everybody else living in that trailer. She's so savvy to what is going on. So when you read a character like that, are you fucking kidding me? Of course you want to give it a go.
I would never have reached out to her, but I think she's brilliant, and I believe she'll have a great career.
Ultimately, for me, the whole journey for her is to build up to that end scene, where she explodes, she can't take it anymore. And it was an interesting thought too, because I think when she actually shoots her brother, it's a moment of almost her saying, I love you, goodbye, this is the best place for you. You're going somewhere better, because I don't know what is left for you here.
You know, I'm always so interested in people who do quote unquote bad things and like why they do it, because there's always some sort of reason. I mean, you read the papers, there's so much crazy shit going on all the time. People have reasons for doing what they do.
You know, Gina Gershon is somebody we had originally approached about doing the play off-Broadway some years ago.
They had approached me about doing the play 10 years before the movie, around that. And I started reading it and I loved it until I got to, when I got to that chicken bone scene, I just kind of went, wow, I don't think I want to do that 8 times a week. And so I passed on it.
If you insult me again, I will cut your face off and wear it over my own.
I know what the qualities that actress has to have in order to play that part. And chief among them is fearlessness, somebody who's got a real taste for blood. You got to have a kind of bloodlust in order to play that role, and Gina's got that. She's always had that.
So when it came about that I was sent this script, and I started reading it going, Killer Joe, it sounds so familiar. And I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, it's that play, it's that chicken bone. I mean, it really haunted me, that scene.
Now, I talked to her a lot more than I talked to the other actors, because there are places that she has to go that are very difficult, not only for an actress, but for a human being.
He is very layered, and he's really smart. He's one of the few directors that I've been able to work with that I really could go deep with my psychological background and talk to him about stuff that I usually keep to myself, because you think, you know, the director might be like, yeah, that's good, just hit your mark and do what you're going to do. And he really gets it. He's really great to work with on, he wants you to play a character really deep. You know, he loves the psychology of it. I mean, he's the real deal.
There are times on the set when Gina wondered if I was taking her too far in one direction or another. And occasionally I did, and I was, and we would discuss it, and often at her suggestion we would pull back, or at my direction we would push against it a little more. But that's the give and take of acting and directing.
I don't know that I've ever worked with a director like Billy who is so thorough in investigating every nuance of who the character is. And I think a lot of that has to do with how thoroughly the characters were written by Tracy Letts.
Even though it's based on a play, Friedkin was always very specific. He said, this is based on a play, but it's not a play. So that would influence the way we rehearse. We wouldn't rehearse this like a play, where it's the repetitions and it's constantly blocking out and knowing you're blocking.
When I started directing, when I was much younger, my first quest as a young filmmaker was for perfection, because the films that influenced me, like Citizen Kane and All About Eve and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, all seemed to me to be perfectly made. And I attempted that, and I used to do take after take after take with actors, looking for a miracle to happen in the next take. And when I make a film now, I'm much more interested in spontaneity than perfection.
Up in the air. Okay. That way.
Friedkin doesn't like to do a lot of takes, so we would be moving really fast, constantly.
The pace, 2 takes, max, move on. I've never done this. Is great, man. You better know your shit when you show up, you know, and get it. And it puts a little extra pressure. I thought it would, because I'm usually a take 5 guy in most films. Warm into which was kind of nice, man. I'd like to do more of this pace.
I try to get the scene in one take because that's where spontaneity lies. The more you try to perfect a moment in a film, the more you start to see the strings, the more you start to see the acting.
He doesn't really want to rehearse, but he doesn't want to do another take. So there's a lot of, you know, the onus is on the actor.
He's got as much energy as any director I've ever worked with. There's no fat with him. There's no extra fat. The fat's been cut off the bone. And you learn it from the first time I sat down with him. We sat down for 1 hour, and it was the most concise and precise hour of words and ideas and point of view from a director I've ever had.
And what I love so much about working with Billy is because, yes, I gravitate towards parts or projects that quote-unquote push the envelope. Honestly, I don't even think about that. I thought, oh, what a great character, let's go here. And often where I want to go, people are like, oh, we can't do that. And I'm like, really? Let's just go for it. And, you know, in Billy's career, I mean, between, you know, Cruise and, I mean, hello, that was like, talk about pushing the envelope, especially at that time, French Connection. His career, he's that sort of director. So I never had to think about, hey, is this too much? I mean, the more, he'd be like, hey, that's great. And so I loved that part of it, because I don't usually meet that. I don't usually come across that.
He's gonna fight for whatever he wants. You know, he's such a passionate man, and he so loves Tracy Letts so much, and Tracy Letts' words that are on those pages are something that's so important to him, and he wants to honor every single syllable.
I had no idea what the type of violence would look like or be like. I really didn't know. You know, and it's certainly very, very extreme. And I think that's something that Tracy and Billy both appreciated from the play. It's performed on so many different theater venues, and I think that Tracy, he sent us a memo kind of early on with a bunch of what makes this play work or what can make the movie work based on the play working. And he said that whenever you play up the violence in a really intense way, it always kind of it makes the play work a little better. So Tracy said, don't shy away from the violence at all. It's part of the shock, part of the kind of ride of the piece.
You couldn't read the script and then show up to set and go, I'm a little uncomfortable with this chicken scene. It was there. You had to sign on. You cashed that check when you said yes, and everyone did. So we knew what pool we were playing in, what sandbox we were playing in. Now, what Tracy wrote were roles that allow for that ceiling to be raised and that basement to be lowered and those walls to be expanded and as artists to go create.
Killer Joe's always been tough stuff, and audiences respond to it in wildly different ways.
It's our secret.
Both in the theater and in the cinema. Audiences have wildly different reactions. Sometimes there are wildly different reactions within the same audience. I came to realize when I was first having a series of readings of the play and first hearing people respond to the play, what I kind of came to realize was that the response that the piece was creating said more about the responder than it did about the piece itself.
Billy was ever going to be like, well, let's bring this back to convention. Let's get safe here. That thought, that was not in the DNA of anyone's thought. That's Billy. That's also the type of picture. You know that when you read it.
It's definitely intense. It's an intense film. I mean, I haven't seen anything like it. You know you're in trouble when all of a sudden Friedkin's just like, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a scene like this. Oh my God. And I'm like, great, I'm in that scene.
Because it seems to me that the scene as we've put it into the film and as we've cut it is possibly unwatchable, to be honest with you. It's so disturbing. It's disturbing to me. I called Tracy Letts when I finished the film. Tracy wrote the script, as I've said. And when I saw it cut together, I called him and I said, you know, when this film comes out, you're going to have to give back your Pulitzer Prize, and I'm going to be run out of the country.
Our responsibility, mine and Billy's, is to tell the story as effectively as we can. Meaning we don't want to comment on it. We don't want to step back and point a finger at these people. We don't want to wink. We don't want to leer. We don't want to sort of stand up behind them for the benefit of the audience and say, look at these buffoons, look at these rubes, look at these animals, look how they're behaving. We wanted to actually present them as human beings involved in human endeavor, perhaps a human comedy of errors.
Is that your dick, Ansel? No.
And ultimately, that was kind of a lesson for me as an artist. I'm going to put this out there, and you're going to respond to it or not in your own way. But this is my expression. This is my truth that I'm expressing. And you can find it a joke, or you can find it a compelling crime story, or you can find it deeply disturbing.
I don't classify a movie. That's up to the audience. I don't want to tell the audience how to think about a film. I don't want any of the elements in a film that I've made to telegraph themselves to an audience about who's a good guy or who's a bad guy. I think there's good and bad in everyone, and that's one of the themes of my films, that there is a very thin line between good and evil, and it's often crossed by all of us, and it's a constant struggle every day for our better angels to triumph over our worst instincts.
Also, there's a pleasure that comes with independent films. You don't have a studio who has to meet a certain quota behind a desk going, hey, you know what, I don't think that's we're gonna lose $1 if we go that far.
I believe that all films should provide some emotion for the audience. They should either make them laugh or cry or be scared. Killer Joe is a story I was attracted to because it contains this element of surprise. And that is what I look for in a performance. That's what I hope an audience will find in a film that I've directed. I hope to surprise you. That's my goal. If I haven't, I've failed. It's that simple. If the film, it may anger you. You may be angered at the film. You might even hate this film. But it's going to be in your face. And hopefully it will surprise you and not simply interest you. If it just interests you, I failed totally.
First, I get the script, and I was told to read for Ansel, and I read the script, and I didn't see myself as an Ansel, but I thought the script was really good. And then I got the script back and said, no, have a look at it for Joe. And Joe's the character that I liked and felt I would be the most right for after the first read. And then it was, I sat down with Billy Friedkin, and he talked about his views on it and how he saw it as, you know, somewhat of a love story and a fairy tale. And we started pointing out some of the humor, of which I did understand a little bit more after the second read. And then really kind of took a liking to it from there, because it was one, like you said a minute ago, it is a character like I haven't really done before, and something that I was interested in. It's pretty outrageous stuff, you know. I'm loving working with Billy, man. He's wild. He's wild, man. And you know what, though? Everything he says, whisper, scream, cuss, poem, has a purpose. Everything he says. I think everything he says, whether he knows it or not, between takes, in small conversation, has a purpose. I like the way he communicates. Someone mentioned the other day, it was like a week in the film, they were like, he was going off about something like, he's a method director. And I was like, yeah, that's whatever that is, that's a good way to put it. He's just able to, he makes it fun because it's very interactive with him, man. But whatever it is, and he's also learned, I've seen him how he communicates with different actors differently along the way, because he sees what turns them on or throws them off, all with a purpose to get what he wants to out of a scene, out of a moment. There's a lot of things, whether people wince or not, there's a lot of things that families, that this goes on, this story with families that go on all over the place. Not always to the extreme, but there's a lot of things that go on in this story that a lot of families will be able to relate to.
I've never played a character like Dottie before. I've played trailer trash before. I like playing trailer trash, but Dottie is a really unusual character because she's this girl that at 20 years old can be perceived as a 50-year-old, but also as an 8-year-old. She's very childish, but then also incredibly wise beyond her years, and she's one of the most honest characters I've ever played in my entire life. She's this extraordinarily honest little creature, and she's so aware of everything that's going on around her, and she digests it so fully and locks it all away and keeps it in this incredible memory bank, so she knows so much. So whenever she, you know, is asking a question or is listening to something or just going about her everyday business, she's so aware of everything that's going on around her and everything she's doing. She's an incredibly intelligent human being. I think preparing for intimate moments is so about getting to know the person that you're doing those intimate moments with, and I've been lucky enough to be doing this with Matthew, and he is such a lovely human being, and me and him have spent a lot of time together rehearsing through scenes and really talking about how our characters feel in that moment. And the thing is that, you know, he really does court her. He wants to romanticize his moments with her because his relationships with women are not like how it's been with Dottie before. Working with Billy is extraordinary. I feel like I've grown up so much doing this movie, and I have an overwhelming trust in Billy. Like, I have no qualms with doing anything that he would ask for in this film, just because I know how he looks at the character, and me and him have talked so much about Dottie, and she's not someone that he's going to exploit in a bad light. You know, she is this honest little angelic creature in the midst of this mayhem. And I think when you have that kind of trust in your director, when he makes you feel like you're so perfect for the role and that you can do it, you know, that you just go for it, and your performance really benefits from that because you aren't afraid to take a risk. Billy is a director that is so passionate about his work that's so inspiring to be around, because you're so invigorated by your director being that passionate that you just get 10 times more passionate than you knew was even possible, you know? And so it's just been such an enjoyable experience, and it's been a learning curve. Like I said, I've definitely grown up a lot. I've had to do a lot of things that I haven't done before, and I'm learning what it is to work with a master, you know? I'm working with one of the most brilliant, established, fantastic directors who's been making movies for almost twice my lifespan, you know? So it's like, I'm so lucky to be here, and I'm learning so much. I'm like a sponge. I'm just taking it all in, and I'm loving working with him.
The character that I'm playing, Chris, is, well, he's a small-time drug dealer, but he also has big dreams and hopes and aspirations, and he's kind of a, you know, a bit of an entrepreneur himself. You know, he's, in the script, he's kind of described as a likable loser in a way, but he's a flawed guy, but he still has big dreams. Well, what drew me to the role and to the overall film of Killer Joe is just the quality of the writing was so incredible. I had seen August Osage County, which was a play that Tracy Letts had done, and I'd seen it about a year before, and it was like such an amazing play, and the writing was so good, and all the characters were so specific that when this script came along, I was like, oh, cool, who wrote it? And they were like, Tracy Letts, and I was like, Tracy Letts, and I looked him up, and I was like, he wrote August, which I loved, and which, by the way, like won the Pulitzer Prize, I think in 2007. So it was just I feel lucky to be able to participate on it in that way. And then additionally, you know, when I found out, you know, William Friedkin was directing it, he's such a iconic master. You know, the ability to get to work with someone of his caliber, you know, the movies he's made, I've loved so many of them. In particular, too, the last movie that he made, based on a Tracy Letts play, Bug. Bug was amazing. Billy definitely has a standard of excellence that he expects out of everybody, and a level of preparation that he expects out of everybody. So, you know, you'd be very ill-advised to come to set ever unprepared or not ready to commit 100% to the scene. You know, Billy's a guy who is very in the moment, and a lot of the times he likes to do one take of something. He doesn't want to sit around all day doing 20 takes. He wants it to be perfect the first time. So, you know, and that's not a laziness or anything like that. That's saying you already have got to have perfected it by the time you even do it. And it's about being efficient and saving money and saving time and saving creative energy on set and really being economic and maximizing your resources. And I think that's pretty exciting to work like that. You know, it's like walking a high wire with no net, you know? The whole cast so far has been just a blast to work with. I've had, you know, hilarious, fun, joking times with Thomas Hayden Church, and Juno Temple, I think, is fantastic and just a really wonderful person and a great actress. And Gina's been just so much fun to work with as well, and she's got such a great charisma and energy to her. And Matthew McConaughey, you know, who is such an iconic movie star already, and I think it's so amazing that he is coming in and playing this role with as much abandon as he has. And I think, you know, it's a dark part in a lot of ways, but he's really bringing the kind of the likability and the humanity to the role, which I think it really requires for the piece, for the movie to make sense dramatically. And I think he's bringing all those different elements. And I think for his fans and for the world, you know, it's going to be really cool to see him in this part. It's something that is very unexpected from him, and it's just cool.
And I guess Tracy Letts had told Billy Friedkin that, you know, I'd be right for the part, which I really appreciated. So, you know, 10 years later, whatever it was, I thought, oh, with Friedkin doing it, and it was such a great cast. And I really loved the part. I just thought, well, if I'm going to do it, this is the way to do it. So You know, Tracy Letts is an amazing writer, obviously, and he writes such like intense characters, and it just, you could read this, you know, again and again and again, and everything makes sense, and everything is revealed, and their motivations are revealed, and you know, I think it's an amazing piece, especially for actors. I mean, it's dark, but I think it's funny. I liked it because I thought it was such a funny script, and I think they're all, you know, quote unquote, you know, bad characters doing bad things. I mean, they're not bad characters; they're people doing kind of dubious things, and I think someone like Charla just, you know, she wants to get out of her situation. I think they're all like little bugs trying to survive, and so they do what they have to do. You know, Billy, it's, you know, to me that's, you know, as soon as you hear Billy Friedkin's doing a movie, you're just like, great, what is it? You know, he's, you know, a legendary director, and he's a very intense director, and he really knows what he wants, you know? I mean, to the point of like, that wall should be yellow, this wall should be blue, we can go in here, and so he's very specific. Emil called me up and he was like laughing. He was like, oh my God, it's so funny. It's the funniest movie, you know, so, and Emil liked it and he was really sweet. So, you know, I just think everyone's really good in it. So it's nice, it's exciting for actors to see.
I play Ansel Smith, the patriarch of the Smith family, and pretty kind of down the middle, blue collar guy, may or may not have been, you know, in prison. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that the director, Billy Friedkin, and I talked about, you know, just kind of little sort of scant backstory about him, and, you know, but pretty straightforward, kind of a guy that's given up on his dreams and now is just, you know, earning a paycheck and living day to day. I found myself wanting to go to more not body shops, but mechanic shops, and I did fool around with some welding and some cutting torches, and with people that I know that use those tools for their trade. But I just, you know, I mean, because where I live in rural Texas, you know, there is a crossover for sure between Ansel's world at work and a lot of what goes on around me. I don't know that I've ever worked with a director like Billy, who is so thorough in investigating every nuance of who the character is. And I think a lot of that has to do with how thoroughly the characters were written by Tracy Letts. It's a story of conflict in a family, and I just think it's a really original sort of approach to that dysfunction.
Killer Joe was written by Tracy Letts, who is a writer that I have the greatest respect for. I've had the opportunity to work with some of the very best playwrights and screenwriters around, like Harold Pinter, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature. I did a work of his. I think Tracy Letts is in that category. He's won the Pulitzer Prize for drama, but he and I are really on the same page. He and I view the world in the same way. And when I saw his screenplay of Killer Joe, I thought that it really would make an excellent film. Letts' screenplay is a view of the American family that is kind of twisted, but I think it's more accurate than a kind of Norman Rockwell view of the American family that has been perpetrated for decades. I think there was a time, maybe, when the American family was more like the Norman Rockwell version than the Tracy Letts version, but not today. And so I think there's truth in his work, there's poetry in his work. I've done a previous screenplay of his called Bug, and I directed a play of his at the South Coast Repertory Theater called The Man from Nebraska. And basically, I find myself, as I've said, on the same page with him in terms of a worldview. Now, that may be sick, but it happens to be true. This is an original story with original characters. What this is to me, in a nutshell, though, is a kind of twisted Cinderella story or Snow White story, in that the young woman in the film, who is living in rather dire circumstances, fantasizes about living in a palace and finding the prince. And eventually, in this story, she does find the prince, but he happens to be a flawed prince. And that's often, as many women out there will attest to, what happens to so many little girls who are looking for a prince. There are a number of actors that could have played this part, but there might have been a very strong resistance to that from an audience if the actor wasn't someone who had already established their relationship with a lot of the audience as a good guy and a decent guy, which Matthew is. He's also an accomplished actor. He gave himself 100% to this role. He came in knowing it, though he never had to do another take because of, blowing a line or not understanding a moment in the film. And I knew he was a dedicated actor and had tremendous reserves of talent and ability that he had not fully exploited in the films that made him popular. I also knew that he was from the part of the country where the film takes place, which is Dallas in Texas. So he understood the character very well. He didn't have to fake it or put on an accent or put on a disguise. Matthew grew up where this story really takes place. So I say it's a combination of his tremendous ability, which I thought to a great extent had been untapped, and his understanding of this character innately. And I think he's great in the film. It's one of the best experiences I've ever had with the whole cast. Chris is he's played by Emile Hirsch, who happens to be one of the best young actors of this or any generation. He reminds me a lot of Montgomery Clift, even James Dean. And he's likable. He's a wonderful, likable, accomplished actor. The character he's playing, for the most part, is on the dark side. He's a guy trying to get ahead. He is without a moral compass. He doesn't really know right from wrong, and he acts impulsively and gets himself in a lot of trouble.
Hello, everybody. I've been told that I have to filibuster just a little bit while some people take care of some things. Oh, we're good? Oh, okay, so I don't have to filibuster. After you see a movie that ends like that, you kind of expect to see me out here on the stage. That's my kind of film, and when they asked me if I would come out here and curate this little Q&A for y'all, I was ecstatic because I've seen a lot of things in my life in the Paramount Theater, but well, we'll talk about it with some of them. Let's see, who do we have out here to come up first here? Let's go ahead and bring out Killer Joe himself. Matthew, come on out. come on out, Tracy. And we also have Caleb Deschanel, was DP for the film. Come on out, Caleb. Great DP for the film. Now, I have to start with it. There's nothing else I can even think of. Tracy, at what point did you conceive of filleting fried chicken?
I wasn't entirely sober, but I don't know where that came from. I clearly don't. I don't have a good answer for it. It's one of those things that springs from somewhere way down in there, and seemed entirely appropriate to the story and to the characters and to the milieu.
He's actually a vegan, and this is actually a plot of his to get people to stop eating meat. It's like part of a broader campaign he's working on.
I don't know. I mean, it just gave me a different idea for how to use fried chicken than I'd ever experienced before. Okay, so Matthew, Gina, you sit there, you read the script, and it comes to this point where you're gonna dangle a chicken leg, and you are really gonna suck it good. I mean, you did a fantastic job with it up there. I have to say, it's the best sucking a fried chicken leg I've ever seen in my life. And how did y'all work that out as actors and what together? And can you go into that a little bit?
It took 4 weeks to shoot that one scene. Rehearsing. Wrong chicken stick, no stick, no chicken leg, no, we did that. What did we do? I mean, we both had it earmarked as kind of, well, that's a doozy.
The idea was like, I actually didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to think about it. I just thought, let's just do it. We never really talked about it that much.
No, it was probably best.
It was best. Just let it happen.
And then we showed up that day. I remember having an earmark and going, that's a special scene. and a scary scene of doozy is the best way to put it. And I don't know. You don't have much time to double think anything with Billy Friedkin as your director. It's pretty much one take, and then if you want to, something must have had to be really wrong.
No, it was the one time I was happy that it was just one take. He's been like, Billy, no, one take, and that's like, hey, no problem. But this scene actually haunted me for a long time, because I had read it like 10 years before. 10 years, and for the play, when I read the play a long time ago. And it just, that scene scared the shit out of me. I mean, I just looked at it, I thought, oh my God, doing that 8 times a week? It haunted me, and so when I didn't even want to attempt to even go there, it kind of haunted me that I was scared to not do a part that was so great because of this one scene. And so when it came up again, I just kept going, oh, there's that scene, and so I didn't want to think about it. And we didn't even really speak that much on the set.
No.
We just kind of looked at each other and looked at what was happening.
Yeah, it was one of those things as an actor when I said, it was like, oh, that's yes a doozy, but boy, that's going to be a great day.
Now,
it was like one of those things that was going to, that's going to be. Women are from Venus.
Now,
I don't know, we just did it.
Well, but I did think about the kind of chicken I wanted to use.
You did, I remember.
I did. I was very clear because I wanted Church's chicken because it was
spicy or original? Spicy or original?
Original.
Okay.
I mean, just because I think it stays together a little bit better.
Yeah.
And it's a good chicken, and it really helped during the scene.
Now,
All in the details.
had you practiced on other chicken legs before, or was this just I'm just going to do it when I come out there? Like how did you develop this technique for fried chicken filet?
Well, I was raised by a Southern woman from Mississippi, and she actually taught me how to make chicken when I was No, not anyway. I know, I couldn't think about it. I didn't want to think about it, but I did think, I just didn't want something gross and greasy, and I just wanted something that tastes good. And it did, really.
Awesome.
And, yeah. I mean, we were eating it before, that was awesome.
Now, Caleb, you've shot a lot of film before. Was there anything special you had to do in terms of lighting the fried chicken in this scene, in particular, what was it that you loved about working with Billy on this film?
Well, the thing about Billy is that like they say, we would do one take, and what it meant was that everybody had to be prepared. The assistants, the operators, everybody had to be ready because you weren't going to get another take. I mean, my favorite story is that there was a scene, outside where the truck pulls up, and we caught the reflection of the camera in there and everything. And I went to Billy when the take was done. I said, Billy, we've got to reshoot because we could see the camera and reflected in the truck. He goes, Mo, don't you realize that everybody out there knows that we use movie cameras to make movies? I think it made it's a testament to the actors and to the script because it really was the way it was on the page, and everybody knew their lines and was well rehearsed, and everybody really, a lot of the movie is just on one take, and it was very rare to do anything else. And really, it keeps things really moving, and I think it's exciting for the actors, and I think it's exciting for everybody because you literally have to be on your toes the whole time, which is what made it great working with him.
Cool. Now, Tracy, you tend to make, the last time you came out with Billy Freakin', you made Bug, which I thought was one of the most singularly brilliant horror films I've ever seen in my entire life. But it did come down to an astonishing end sequence in a room with a group of people, and I understand that you're writing these as plays. Talk about your process in terms of taking characters to that point of pure insanity on the page.
I don't know, I always like that feeling of getting to the train wreck, and then as an audience member, getting to the train wreck and thinking, how the hell did we get here? What sort of set this avalanche in motion? And so if you sort of trace things back to that, whatever that original impulse is, in Bug, it's a simple act of kindness, or just a kernel of madness, or maybe an actual real bug floating around.
Yeah.
And here it's sort of the classic trope of greed and which is it's pretty straight out of Pulp Fiction. This idea that we need some money and we're going to make some really bad decisions in trying to acquire it.
No, it's classic noir structure in that respect. Now, what was it about this film that got all y'all? Oh wait. Do we have someone on the phone? Yes? Is somebody on the phone?
Hello?
Hey, Billy.
Hey, it's Billy!
Hello, guys. I've been listening to this fascinating discussion and why you're all so fixated about chicken bones. I'm coming to you from beautiful downtown Vienna. It's about 10 minutes to 7. And guys, I'm so happy that you're all there. And I mean it, I really wish I could be there with you. But I'm directing an opera here for this very great opera company called Tales of Hoffman. And it's completely without fried chicken, which puts me a little insecure.
Yes. Well, Billy, what was it about Tracy Letts Play that made you come to this material?
His worldview, which I completely share. I think that Tracy Letts deals with a kind of truth that's both above and beneath the surface. There are many things going on in Tracy's work, and I think that they reflect the kind of out of control insanity that seems to exist all around me wherever I go. And Tracy manages to nail that better than any writer I've worked with since Harold Pinter.
can we look forward to the two of you working together again in the future sometime?
I hope so. You know, I don't make too many plans at my age, Harry. In fact, I just read on Twitter that I was dead. So, yeah, there are a couple of people on Twitter who said, I think William Friedkin's going to be on this panel tonight at South by Southwest, and someone else said, no, I think William Friedkin's dead. So I had to pour myself a cup of rich, hot, steaming, delicious hot coffee to make sure I was alive and could join you. I really miss you guys, and I miss the fun we had shooting this. Everyone did this because they loved the material, and they enjoyed it, and so did I. It was easily the best experience I've ever had making a film.
Okay, Billy, we're going to ask the audience some questions here. Yes?
You can ask them questions?
Yes. What's your name?
I hope they have some answers.
The question was for Caleb. There was a lot of blue in the film. Was there significance with that?
Well, you know, I mean, the predominant blue was in the nightclub, and that was really a discussion that Billy and I had, because Billy hated the idea of all these nightclub scenes being red and orange and all these other colors, and so, you know, he said, you know, let's go against that. So we just sort of went to blue, and then that sort of became thematic in the night scenes with the rain and everything else. So I mean, it just was, you know, symbolic, you know, for me of, you know, the kind of you know, quagmire that these people were in, and but other than that was it.
Right there.
Hey Matthew, Gina, and Neil, when Thomas hated church, deadpan's a line. How the hell do you not crack up in every scene?
I got him, Joe! He comes in so tardy. It's another we knew on that day that was a gold medal. Classic.
It wasn't, but to me it was his face. I couldn't really look at his face because he'd have these expressions when he knew he didn't know what anyone was talking about. So I made a choice just not to look at him. Because I would start to laugh.
I remember the cast breaking up after almost everything we did. And I've never experienced that before, where the cast would do a scene, and then when I'd say cut, they just start laughing, breaking up. They understood the humor of this, and it is a black comedy. That's what it's intended to be, and I think it is. But to me, I approached it with a great sense of reality. I was not trying to satirize these characters or do it in an ironic sense. Just, this is it, the way Tracy writes. This is who they are.
Right here.
Question was, do you want to read the script?
When
I just don't know it's going to be an iconic character.
When you came into this, was it going to be an iconic character, and were you worried about that?
I wasn't worried about it. No, I didn't know. I read it. I mean, it came off the page for me. I haven't never told you this, Tracy. I think I told you this, Billy. First time I read it, it didn't matter what mood as an actor when you read something that you're in. The first time I read it, I was disgusted. I remember throwing the script off. I said, oh, that's just icky. I don't even want to be a part of that. And I forgot who it was I talked to, but I went and they said, oh man, read it again. It's very, very funny. I was like, funny? What are you talking about? I went back and I read it, and all this, I had 40 big laughs. And all of a sudden got the joke, met with Billy, and that was great, and then I was in. I didn't know that it would be whatever it was going to be. I'm happy with what it turned out to be. It was definitely something that, you know, I was very excited to get out of bed every morning to come to work. Every scene's charged with great dialogue. Again, we were talking about, Billy was talking about, what Tracy wrote was not something that we didn't go to set and work on, hey, let's get the dialogue right. That discussion was was done just after reading it the first time. You go, well, you don't need to change any dialogue. You can stick to that, and that's definitely not true with 95% of the things that I've worked on. You want to keep pining. There was none of that on it. It was, you got in, you did it, and it was there, and if you said you couldn't really screw up. You could have a different interpretation of what he wrote, but you couldn't really screw it up. And plus, if you did screw it up, you didn't really have to take two, did we, Billy? And it kind of lined right in.
No,
I'm very happy with it.
You know, what I appreciate most in the films that I see and the ones that I've done is spontaneity. I'm much more interested in the spontaneous reaction of actors than perfection. If you're doing Shakespeare, where everything is in a certain meter, you know, this kind of blank verse, that's different. You know, you have to really polish that and rehearse it very diligently. But in something like this, I felt that I had a perfect cast and I could allow them to be spontaneous.
Next question. Yes, right here.
I have a question for Tracy. I'm a huge fan of your.
Thanks.
Thank you for writing it. What was the biggest challenge in adapting a stage play to screenplay?
Well, you know, with both this and Bug, they actually don't logically translate that well. I mean, they are set in single sets, small casts, these odd, long scenes, right? Lots of dialogue. That's the nature of a play. You know, with Bug, the assignment was a little different. The first thing Billy ever said to me about Bug was, first, do no harm. And these people are delusional paranoids and aren't agoraphobic. They're not going to be leaving this location. Killer Joe allowed for a lot more traveling outside of the trailer. Not only allowed for it, I was reminded that when writing the play, figuring out how to contain all the action inside the trailer was actually the challenge. So writing the screenplay actually freed me up to do some of that. Then, you know, some of the language in a play is heightened, and so the job becomes, how do you take that down a little bit and make it a bit more street level, and it doesn't sound, because theatrical language can sound a little arch in movie theater. And then, you know, you just put your faith in somebody like Billy, who, I mean, you hear it in what he says and what these others say. There's a great respect for the written word. I've not had great experiences in Hollywood, and Billy from the beginning has been, from long before me, Billy's always been very respectful of the writer. And clearly I'm happy about that. So, you know, I did it with a lot of help is how I did it. And it helps too when you've got really good actors translating the work for you. It just, believe me, it makes everything a lot easier. It makes me sound a lot better.
Back there in the corner.
Obviously, a lot of the power of the piece is its ability to oscillate between being really funny and also that darkness. And so for Mr. McConaughey, I was just kind of curious if between the laughs, if it was difficult to kind of tap into that type of cruelty, though. You know?
What was the last part that you said?
To kind of tap into that cruelty, even though it's like in between the laughs.
All right, so the question was that what makes it work is that it oscillates between being really serious, what do you say? And
being really serious, but then being really funny.
And then really funny, right.
And then as an actor, what is it like trying to tap into both of those realms?
Well, it was a pretty, I mean, my approach to it was to keep Joe really stealth and everything inside forward and sustain that for as long until he snaps at the end, the house where he's working out with where the check went and how he got kind of screwed out of the deal and how her math wasn't so good. But it was sustaining it until then. I mean, if there were different levels that I carried there, but mainly was to keep it all inside, very deliberate until that point was to go. It's the only time that Joe really goes outside, and it does happen. I thought it happened and tried to make it happen on sort of a dime. And I think in watching it, and it was sort of, for me, the literal point was when punches her, and that's it. And it got me tonight watching it, which was nice to see that. And I'm, whoa, what's he doing? and I didn't expect it from the man that I'd been watching before, but I just felt like something was brewing underneath him the whole time, and it was holding that. And then just playing it straight, you know, and then after that, letting it loose from that point on in the story.
Billy, I have a question for you. There, towards the end of the film, we have Matthew just slamming a can and decide to pour Emil's face here.
Pumpkin can. Can, not just any can. That was a special can, wasn't it, Billy?
Oh yeah.
Pumpkin.
That was called for in the script, obviously.
Okay. So you go from taking Matthew to that point to that glorious face of his saying the word baby. How do you keep it all straight?
Look, this is a great performance that he gives.
Absolutely.
And I feel that way about, you know, everyone else in the cast. It's a great performance because the music is there, too. A work like this, forget what it's based on, forget that it's set largely in one place. It is beautiful music. It's real. To me, it's like Miles Davis, you know? Through all of the incarnations of Miles Davis music, there's something to grab onto, something new and something lasting. And that's what this was to me. How do you do this with someone like Matthew McConaughey or Emile Hirsch or Gina, who are really fine actors? You get out of their way. You know, there's too much credit, I really believe, that goes to a director. There has become the cult of the director in movies. And the director's most important work is to select material he feels comfortable with and try and get people who can put it over. And that's how you do it. And you try to get out of their way. I don't try to leave a footprint on the films that I make. I just try to tell the story. And, you know, I've had some success and some failure doing that. The failure is usually my fault. Some decision that was wrong that I made, either in personnel or in interpretation. But that work is there. It would be terrific in the hands of, you know, a great many other directors. Might have even been better. But I heard the music, and I think everyone that's on that stage did as well. It's tough material. There's no question about it. And it's not something that you're going to say, oh, well, geez, this is going to challenge Avatar out there. It's not. It's very special, and it's an acquired taste that we all have. But, you know, what's important is the joy of doing the work. That was what was important to us. We loved it because we believed in it.
Thank you. Matthew, basically the same question regarding that scene where you're tearing Emile up, and do y'all have any trouble there with that can?
No, I came up half inch short each time, right?
That's a good aim.
But for you to go from that moment of just ferocious intensity, and I understand that they turn the cameras off and do angle and do shot and stuff, but to keep the flow of the character to where the intensity is every bit as intense, but it's a different intensity. It's no longer violent, it's life-changing. And can you talk about going to that moment that we see as the last moment of the film?
After ejaculation.
After fried chicken ejaculation, after canning the side of Emile Hirsch's head, gunshots.
Well, that was it was now sincerely, and it was this guy was about family, and that's part was funny. This is about structure and family, and we're not going to cuss in this household, and we're going to sit down as a family, and we're going to be civil. Watch your mouth, and that's part of what was just upside down about it. And Joe very much meant that. I mean, he in his own fantasy or realistic world, whatever it was vital. It was the way that this was going to work out. He still had a couple of kinks to work out, and we got my brother coming home. He's going to want to take her, and we cannot allow that to happen. Like he says, he's employing their health.
Yeah.
Which is, what are you talking about? So, but yeah, it made sense to him. It was about, there's something about family for me approaching the role that in a sick kind of way made sense for Joe the whole way through.
Cool.
In every one of the characters, I think, is illustrated the thin line between good and evil. I think that was certainly the key that opened the door for me. How there are wonderful instincts in these people, and all of their need for family, and just their inability to live up to any kind of a code. Although they had a great desire to achieve a kind of peace and sensibility, an inability to go about it.
Back to center.
Yeah, to me, Dottie became, she almost seemed like she had the last laugh on everyone in a way, in her rebellion, her act of rebellion at the end of it. But thinking back to the first shot in which you see her, there's almost a rosebud moment of the snow globe. What was the deal with the snow globe? Was that something that had a little bit more prominence earlier, or was that
Billy, I think this question is for you. It's what is the significance of the snow globe that Dottie has at the beginning of the film? And was it influenced by Rosebud at all?
Everything I've ever done has been influenced by Rosebud. Citizen Kane is the film that made me want to become a film director, you know, and I don't know, it was just on the set. One of the things that doesn't get mentioned a lot is art direction and set design that plays so important a role in a film like this, and the costumes, you know, the clothes that they wear. But that little snowball was on the set. I didn't even ask for it. It was something the art director thought belonged there, because Dottie was living kind of in her own fantasy world. To me, I can best sum up this picture by saying it's a kind of twisted Cinderella story. She's looking for her prince, and she finds her prince, only he happens to be on the Dallas police force, and he's also a hired killer. But he's her prince, and everything in her room supports the idea that she has to separate herself from the reality of the world of the Smith family, and she does. And that was just one lovely little detail. I didn't ask for it. I wasn't trying to, you know, do an homage to Citizen Kane. You know, you can sort of think so if you want to, but it wasn't. It was one of many elements that the set decorator brought to us that I thought was useful.
Okay, last question right over here.
I'm curious, how did y'all get into the mindset of the characters? I mean, did y'all hang out with people who were similar to...
The question is about how did you get into the mindset of the characters, and this is 2 or 3 actors on stage.
It was kind of funny because early on, I don't know when the discussion came up, but Billy told me not to do an accent. So I was just like, okay, I'll just you know, I'm from Venice Beach, Southern California, just show up. So I show up to rehearsals, but everyone's doing an accent. So I was just said, fuck it, and just winged it, and just started fucking doing an accent. And that was kind of the way it went. And I used, you know, one of my buddies in Topanga growing up, you know, he used to live in a trailer, and his family was crazy. And, you know, we always used to be in there, and it was just, I mean, it was almost like the household of you know, the Smiths. So I kind of definitely, you know, plunged into some deep sea sense memory for that.
Gina?
I traveled a lot through the South for a couple of years,
with my ex-boyfriend when he was on the road. So I actually went through a lot of places that kind of reminded me of this world. And also then I came across that great documentary, The Wonderful, Wacky World of the White Family. What's it called? Does anyone know? Yeah, I'm mispronouncing it, the title. But it was just these kind of, trailer people, and I don't know, I just kind of became obsessed with them. And I don't know, I also just think these people are real people. To me, Charlotte she's a survivor, and she was trying to get out of a situation the best way she knew how. And I don't know, I think the great thing about the writing is if you just keep reading it and reading it, it just starts revealing itself to you. And then any other inspiration you get is kind of, that's fun. I mean, it's icing on the cake. But it's all there. It was all there on the page. Matthew.
Yeah, I don't know a great answer to that question, but I spent my fair amount of time in trailer parks. I don't know any hired killers that I know of. That I know of. But I don't know, it smelled good. It tasted, the world was kind of exciting to me after I understood the script and the words that Tracy wrote. After sitting down with Billy and talking to him, I felt like it was going to be in wonderful hands. The guy was really excited and had control of the material and in all the right ways, so that made me more excited. And I guess for me it was this is a guy who's living in he's an island. The guy I played, Joe, he's a very isolated character, and so a lot of what he was about was not said, and it was a lot of work for me, which was different than some other characters I've played lately, which was a lot more interior and not exterior. And so that was fun to guys like that, whether what they're saying is they're being very honest or not. There's almost an internal monologue, not necessarily a dialogue. It's almost, and it was about structure. Everything with Joe was about it must be this, and it adds up to this, and that's how the world works. Mind you, it was a math problem. He's been working out, and he's on the outside of regular math class for sure. But that, like I said earlier, family, an isolated guy who doesn't have family, probably has never had. Did a bunch of fun fiction on where he might have come from, stuff like that. But that's kind of actors stuff you do that you never hear about, and may matter and may not.
Now, do we have Billy still on the line?
Yeah.
Billy, before we let you go, that was the last question. I just want to say you have got to come to town with a remastered, brilliant print of Sorcerer to make up for not being here tonight, okay?
I promise I'll do that.
All right, thank you.
I love the times I came to the Alamo Draft House, and
or we could do it at the Paramount Theater. It's fantastic here.
I'd love to do that, and when I get back, I'm planning to make a remastered version of Sorcerer, and I'll bring it there first. I know how much you appreciate it, and I do too, so I'll get to work on that as soon as I get back, if I don't have to recut the picture. The one thing that I think has gone unsaid there is that this picture was rated NC-17. I'd be curious to know how many people in the audience think that should be the rating. Is there any way you could...
Audience members, raise your hand if you think it should be NC-17. There's what do you say that is?
6, 12, 14, 18 people, 19, one just came up in the back. 19 out of, what do we got here? 90? 100? 1,200. Yeah. 19 out of 6,222.
Yeah.
How many?
19 out of a grand. 19 out of a grand.
Yeah, it's a very curious thing, the rating. It's subjective. There's no rule book. There's nothing that they have that says, if you do this, you get that rating. It's completely subjective. And, it's become like the X rating. It's become censorship for many reasons. And, I've seen many more violent films than this. where it's violence from beginning to end. I've seen much more simulated sexuality, and you have to remember that this scene that you were talking about for about 15 minutes is just a chicken bone. You know, it's not something else. It's what's in your mind. We all know what it stands for, but you don't rate what something stands for. So I was a little bummed out by that, but I do want to, throw out a shout to Mickey Liddell and David Dinnerstein, who may be there. I think they might be at the screening.
They are here.
But,
yes, they are.
But they're planning to release the film, and more, that takes a lot of cojones to release this film in this climate, which is certainly, at the moment, not the most permissive climate for freedom of expression. Everything is politically correct today, or people seem to get more upset about things than I can ever remember. And what this is, putting aside my contribution and that of the actors and of Caleb Deschanel, this is a real contemporary work of art. And it should not be treated like the Nazis treated art that was Jewish-inspired in the 1930s, and they called it degenerate art. The NC-17 rating is a label that gives that indication. I was very surprised that it got that. On the other hand, when I finished the film, I remember calling Tracy, and I remember saying to him, Tracy, when this thing comes out, you're going to have to give back your Pulitzer Prize, and I'm going to be run out of the country. And that's where I happen to be right now.
Well, we wish you were here, Billy.
Me too.
Okay. Before I let the audience go,
Billy.
We have
JKL, Matthew.
All right,
buddy. Look under your seats. If you have something under your seat at the back of the theater as you go out, you can redeem that for a Killer Joe poster. And I think we only have 10 of these, so be sure to take a look. Once again, I'd like to thank Matthew, Gina, Emil, Tracy, and Caleb. And hope to see you all back next time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, in Austin, Texas at the Paramount Theater. Welcome to the Paramount. I myself, as you can see, am not in the Paramount Theater. I'm in a place called the Theater an der Wien, which is in Vienna. Now, this is a very famous and historic theater, and I'm here directing Offenbach's opera, The Tales of Hoffmann. Now, the set is just to my left, about 30 feet. I can't show you the set. I can't put it on film because the ratings board might give it an NC-17. It's a very edgy production, not unlike Killer Joe. This is a very historic theater. It was built in 1801, and about 1 meter in that direction, Beethoven was the resident music director and conductor, and he had apartments here, and he premiered his 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 6th symphonies in this theater, along with his only opera, Fidelio, and many other of his works. In fact, Beethoven conducted the first performance of the 5th Symphony here. The orchestra had only one rehearsal, and they played very badly, as I'm told. Not by any of the survivors, but that's the legend. Beethoven couldn't hear the applause. He was deaf at the time. And the members of the orchestra had to turn him around where he could see this entire audience on its feet after the world premiere of the 5th Symphony. Killer Joe is a film that I must say I've never had more fun making a film in my life. That's primarily because of the great script by Tracy Letts and by the performances of Matthew McConaughey and Gina Gershon, all of whom are here tonight, along with my friend, the excellent cinematographer Caleb Deschanel, who shot Killer Joe. I would like to say to you that I hope you enjoy the film, but I'm not sure that enjoy is the word. It's a very hard-edged film, which I think will give you an emotional response. I'm not sure what that is, and I'm sure you will remember it. You may love it or you may hate it, but I don't think you'll dismiss it. At least I hope not. We're doing this screening, the first in the United States, because I've been to Austin on several occasions, hosted by Harry Knowles at the Alamo Drafthouse, and I find this audience, the one you're in, to be one of the most cinema knowledgeable audiences in the world. I would rank it with Paris, France. And so I'm very pleased that you're seeing the first American screening of Killer Joe. But in the meantime, please relax, take off your hats and coats, enjoy some great popcorn at the Paramount Theater or whatever is your fancy. And thank you for coming this evening to the premiere of Killer Joe.